Today is a different type of video. You see, the context to this one was, we were doing a live stream where we were discussing whether a man should care about a woman's body count if she converted to Christianity. And there was a lot of discussion about this on Twitter, so I was going over that. And a couple of the tweets I was discussing came from a person called Darling Strawberry, and she was made aware of this live stream and decided to join in chat to clarify her position. And instead of that, I decided to invite her on stream so she can just explain her position. And it was very enjoyable. Neither of us knew anything about each other. All we knew about each other were a few tweets made online, and we decided to go from there. Aside from the tweets, the only thing I knew about her was that she was a sizable Vtuber, which is why I put her in the thumbnail. The discussion we had was extremely pleasant, and I hope you enjoy it. There's one problem though. In the live stream, I had audio tracks of my voice, the rain, the music, and her voice. For her audio track, they are all completely merged together. So if you hear any audio issues, I do apologize. That is my fault. And I tried to do the best I could to possibly fix it. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the video. A special thank you to all the patrons who decided to support the channel. This video is probably going to get demonetized, so if you'd like to support me, be sure to subscribe to the Patreon.
How you?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. I think that they can as well. Let me turn it up, by the way, as well. I think.
Okay.
There we go. Can you all hear her, by the way? Be sure to give like a 2 if you can hear her. I do appreciate you all coming on stream and everything. If you want, I could lay out the exact position and like the little thing I do have a problem with, and we could talk about that if you'd like.
Sure. What's your... Sorry, hold on. I'm trying to open up the stream on my computer. I was on my phone. It was so weird. I was actually like taking a nap, and I woke up and like this was the first thing I saw, and I thought it was like a pre-recorded... Like, I thought you had already streamed, and I was like, why is it not letting me skip ahead? And then I realized you were live.
Yeah, why can't we get to the interesting part? I want to skip past all of this boring nonsense. Where do we get to the action?
I was like, he's talking about this. I was like, I want to hear, like, I'm confused.
No, I get that. It's more of the mentality of, and like, feel free to correct me if you think that, like, I'm misrepresenting your position at all. When it comes to your position, you're fine with men just saying, hey, I don't want to deal with any of that, the history, the promiscuous behavior, or any of that stuff. But you do have a problem with other men saying, hey, no self-respecting man would be in a relationship with such a woman who has that history. And you feel...
Yeah.
And you feel like maybe that's like putting down women or something like that. I'd like to actually hear more of your position on why you think that men shouldn't do that, or you think that's wrong.
I guess I just... Sorry, I'm like definitely not a professional debater or anything.
You don't have to view this as a debate.
Never did that. No, and I know it's not that. It's more of a conversation, which I appreciate. And I'm just like, I've never did this before. It was very spur of the moment.
Bro, I don't judge you at all.
I will say, like, you do seem like you're like talking in good faith. Like, I don't feel like this is like, you know, like you're trying to like catch me or something or do something weird, which I appreciate. I guess I just look at it as like, man, if you really fell in love with someone and, you know, they did some stuff and like whether it was like, I don't know, people are using that as an example. I don't know if the girl in that main post did. Like, it didn't sound like it was.
I don't think she
like
did.
It was just she like slept with people.
Yeah, it's so sad, all of that, because it genuinely, like, I saw a video from Harmful Opinions. He literally went into all of the detail. No, it literally was just, and it's so sad because I genuinely feel bad about like mocking her and like calling her a hoe. She genuinely seems like a very sincere person. From what I can see, it was something that happened when she was like 15 years old. And that's very bad, given she said that it happened as well with like somebody who's like 50 years old. That's pretty horrible.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's really messed up, actually. I feel incredibly bad for her. She, like, if anything, there's a lot more evidence to suggest that she doesn't call herself a victim. But you could really read into it and see it as such, in my opinion. You know, so it's like, I think this discussion is good to have. It is happening over the wrong people, though. That it shouldn't be happening with this type of person. And I think it would be healthy for like a lot of us to get away from the whole, you've seen the memes of the married couple, the photo with Trevor. I think we got to get away from that. But
yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Yeah.
But you went back to more like, hey, what if you're in a relationship with a person and then you find this out and everything? And how do I put it? I'm trying to think because it's so hard.
Or maybe you're friends with them first and you kind of already knew. and then but maybe you fall in love with them. I don't know. Like, do you think that would not be a possibility that someone could like be friends with someone and know like, hey, this like and like decide? Because I don't think most people like do OnlyFans, you know, like you go on the street. Most people they might have been like promiscuous in their past, but like they probably didn't have it.
Mhm.
It's not like that common to walk up to a girl. I would hope not, at least, and like them have one. If you're friends with someone, I don't know, you get to know them and like you just fall in love with them, especially if they are someone who, I mean, of course you can never like see someone's heart, you know,
Mhm.
you don't really know what anyone truly believes, I guess, but like you can't obviously see their fruit. You can try to see how they act and stuff. But like I don't know, like if you really think she's genuinely repented and you think, or he, you know, it could be either,
Mhm.
I guess, but if you think they have and you genuinely love them and like you're like, okay, like I think I really want to be with this person, like I'm willing to deal with this and willing to like talk through this.
Mhm.
Like, should someone like be able to like tell him like, oh, he's a simp, he's stupid, you know, you're dumb, you shouldn't do that. Like, I get someone like maybe warning their friend or something, like,
Mhm.
hey man, like I don't know if you're aware of this, but like ultimately I feel like it's up to the guy. And if the guy really believes she's changed and she's different and like he sees himself like he could be in a happy relationship with her,
Mhm.
I feel like there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, like I would agree in everything. If there's a guy, he says, "Hey, I fell in love with her. I know about her past and everything, and I'm making this decision." I totally would respect that.
Hmm.
But I think as a general mentality, which we should normalize in society and how we should treat each other, I don't think it would be bad at all to say, like, I don't think you should be with this woman. I think this is bad news. There's a lot of baggage that comes with it, or who knows if she'll relapse or if she really changed. I don't think it would be wrong for men to discourage that from him getting married to her. To give a little bit more meat on the bones, because I want to like specify, let's say it's a former prostitute and she claims that she changed and you want to take that risk, you like her. I think a better thing would be for him to get married to her in spite of all the pushback that he gets. I don't think we should diminish the pushback. It is still his decision. It is a bit of societal shame and everything, and I do think that there's a utility and purpose behind it. And if he wants to marry her, that's fine. But I think it still would be good for especially a lot of men to say, hey, you should avoid these types of women. You shouldn't normalize this. If anything, it becomes a very rare exception, which can exist, but we, for the most part, want to stay away from that. And we don't think that men should get into these types of relationships. And I think that it's not fun to say. I do think that there's a bit of truth to the idea that the types of men who would get married to, like, say, a former prostitute or a former porn star, there is something odd about that, that you would be willing to really go through with that. That's
No,
my
I mean, don't
opinion.
get me wrong. It would be a wild thing, I'm sure. Like I really couldn't imagine, like, you know, especially if they were like an actual star. Like, yeah, that would be a lot of baggage to take on for sure. I'm just saying I don't think that it's fair to necessarily say that all men that would do it are like, you know, like they have no self-respect. I don't know. I guess it's like a very black and white statement that I have an issue with.
Hmm. Well, let me see. Let me think about that for a sec.
I mean, it seemed like you yourself said like there might be some exceptions. So I don't know. I feel like it's the very black and white statements of like, no, you would never be self respecting. I have an issue with that, I feel like.
Well, I think for me personally, like, I do believe the exceptions exist. And, like, especially for a lot of these women, maybe they've had a messed up past and they do genuinely change. I'm very much willing to, like, accept that. And I do think that those exceptions do exist. But I'm very much in favor of trying to minimize them and to keep them as exceptions. If we, I think if we remove this type of mentality of like, hey, a person with lower self respect would marry such a woman who has that type of history, who has that baggage, or maybe even a whole set of problems. You don't know about the STDs or the emotional stuff. I do think that is useful and good in itself. Maybe he was being a bit too dogmatic, but I think in general, for the most part, that sentiment is healthy and good, in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, I hear you. I guess like what if we took like and like
Hmm.
literal prostitutes off the table, right? Because I do think that is a
Sure.
bit different, right, than just someone who's, you know, dated around, like, you know, whether they had sex out of marriage, whether they, you know, just like dated a lot of people. Like, if you take that off the table, do you still feel the same way?
I think that there's a lot more nuance to it for sure. I think that like it's not just women sleeping around, it's also men. And like I view them equally in the same light as and I view it's wrong. And I hope you would too. I don't know where you really stand on a lot of that stuff, but it
No,
sounds like
I do. I very much think it's wrong.
oh wait, I
I
do remember you saying that. Yeah, my
Go
bad.
ahead. No, you're good. I mean, I do think it's wrong. Like, I do think it's a sin. I am a Christian. Like, I do believe it's a sin. I wasn't always a Christian. So at one point, I really didn't care. Although, you know, it's interesting. People hear my perspective and they assume all different kinds of things about me. And, you know, it's like you want to,
Mhm.
you almost want to like defend yourself in these moments because you're like, you know, what they're saying is just genuinely not true. But like for me specifically, and like
Mhm.
I've been somewhat open about this before, but I always like internet dated people my whole life. I was very like insecure growing up. I really didn't want to date people like in real life. I always focused on school and stuff.
Mhm.
And I was always kind of chronically online. And so I always dated people online. So like I'm not going to say I never did anything bad with people online, you know. But in terms of like real life, like I'm gonna be honest with you, I never had sex with anyone until I met my husband. We were not married at the time.
Mhm.
I wasn't a Christian, so I really, like I said, I didn't care. For me, it was like I knew that when I did that with someone, I was going to have to really love that person, and I didn't necessarily want to wait for marriage because again, I wasn't religious. Like that wasn't something that I cared about, but it was more like I want to be with this person forever because I know myself. I will get attached, and it's gonna really hurt me. Sorry, I'm not trying to get emotional. Like I knew it would really hurt me though if I was to do that with just anybody. Not to mention the fact that I was very much like, was always, like I said, very insecure. And I sometimes feel like God gave me that so that I wouldn't have been promiscuous when I was younger, because I do sometimes wonder, like, if I wouldn't have been so insecure, maybe I would have like slept around. Maybe I would have went out and did like crazy stuff, you know? So sometimes I like think about that, which is like kind of off topic, I guess, but
I
I
get
don't
you.
know, but it's just interesting. It's interesting to see people call me a whore, though, just for my opinion, or say like, "Oh, for sure, slept around," and she is for sure like, you know, this is all a self-report. Maybe some of it is like I just see like broken people, and like
Mhm.
I myself have like very much been there. Maybe not in the exact same way, but like, you know, I've had my fair share of brokenness in my life. Um, sorry.
I get you. Well, with what I think with that is it is a bit more nuanced with the promiscuousness because especially how do I put it? It's not just simply a woman thing, it's also a guy thing. And I think that this is my general perspective, and I think it sounds more of like a reasonable one, probably one you would agree with. There are people who do like fully save themselves and everything for marriage. And I think that is virtuous. I think that's a good thing to have in society. And I think also, especially for those types of people, it would be better for them to what's it called? Be with other people who also save themselves. And I think that would even kind of be a bit more fair for them. But in terms of like
Right.
promiscuousness, like it reminds me of I don't know if you know him, but Andrew Wilson, like you might not like him or you might like him, I don't know. But he actually
Mhm.
led a more of like I think he led more of a promiscuous lifestyle before. He slept around with people. And he got married. And he got married to a woman who
Mhm.
was previously divorced. She even had children. But he still supports the more traditional lifestyle, saving yourself for marriage and all the rest. But he finds it
Mhm.
perfectly fair and fine to marry those types of people, especially if you're not really any better compared to them with that. Like, should you really
Right.
be expecting a virgin for marriage if you didn't save yourself for marriage as well? I mean, I think both of us would find that pretty hypocritical, right?
No, I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
And
And
again, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting something specifically. I think it's just more about heavily judging someone else for their decision whenever they're happy and like like that couple, you know, the couple this is kind of all framed around, like they seem very happy, like she seems very committed to him and him to her, and I just don't understand people like, you know, saying just disgusting things about them. I just don't get it.
Gotcha. Their situation's it's a lot different compared to what people made it out to be. It wasn't like they were very promiscuous or anything like that. It seemed more like a marketing thing. We were talking about that. I don't know if
I will say the way he posted it was definitely like in some of the things he said, like when he said that his wife was more pure. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with every single thing you said, but I'm just saying overall, like, you know, in terms of their relationship and like her specifically, like just having a past
it
and like
felt
people
it
being
felt
like,
like
oh,
we
she's
got
a whore.
clickbaited. I think we got clicked. We've been
Yeah.
we've been pinned against each
And I
other to
guess
fight over something that for a nothing burger.
And I guess like one of my biggest concerns too, though, that I've seen, and it's not anything that I feel like you've said, but I've seen a lot of people in comments like regarding this and just in general over the last couple of days being like, well, a whore is always a whore. And, you know, you'll never change. You'll always be a whore. And it's like, that's something I very much think is wrong.
Well,
And
that
I would hope that you would agree with that.
well, I think it's a bit more nuanced. Look, I'm not gonna be like, how do I put it? I mean, if you've seen any of my tweets, I'm pretty wild on Twitter.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know like anything about
Well,
you.
I'm just
I
like,
found this like
I'm saying,
someone tagged me under your tweet.
I got you. Well, I'm saying that because, how do I put it? If you ever go back, you want to see anything I have ever said, and it's just like, I do call people like, I don't know if I really called anybody specifically a whore. Maybe I have. I don't know. I'm pretty antagonistic at times on Twitter with all this stuff. But my position, and I would have to give a bit of pushback, but I'm going to do so respectfully, not going to personalize this at all. But I genuinely do think that there is a beneficial thing to that with society. Like with women who are promiscuous, I think that what is currently happening is they're trying to remove more and more consequences for an objectively immoral lifestyle. If we're just saying promiscuous behavior, or even cheating, in many instances, it really goes unpunished. And I don't believe that's healthy for society. We even had sodomy laws in the past. I think that at the bare minimum, if we can even keep shame, which is, hey, she did sleep around and everything. Look, it's not fun because she did repent, she did change, and we do wish the best for her. But there aren't many other guardrails to help keep women from being promiscuous themselves other than using the shame, other than saying, well, she was a whore that did sleep around, and it does kind of follow you for the rest of your life. In varying degrees, there's a bit more nuance to that. But I think that, especially with how society is today, I genuinely think that's one of the only real ways we can help to prevent this type of behavior in like our daughters or the next generation or people who are growing up, because we don't want this behavior. Other than that, I don't really see a lot of ways we can safeguard against this. So I do find a utility behind that.
I mean, I just don't know if I will really 100% agree with that. Like, I see what you're saying, I guess, but I don't know. I can't, I'm going to be honest. Like, obviously, I don't like what you're saying entirely. It's just that, I don't know. It's the concept of, like, it feels like some people, it's also just, like, the way they say it. Like, a lot of people who say things like that, like, I feel like they're not very, they just are not very kind. Like, I'm not saying you have to be, like, nice and, like, you know, and like condone sin and things like that, but like I don't know, a lot of people are like, you're a whore, you're always gonna be a stupid whore. Like I don't know, I feel like a lot of the people who have that mentality are not always behaving in the most like Christ-like ways. And hey, I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm perfect, you know, like I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes, and like especially when you're getting into arguments and stuff online, it's easy to get angry and maybe say things that are not the most kind or loving, but I don't know.
No, I get you with that. It especially like on Twitter, it's very easy to like just see a lot of the, you know, polarizing posts. Like I even make those polarizing posts. I can understand your sentiment, which is you don't like it because it is much more antagonistic. I think you can call that out and say, hey, many of these people who are, you know, for example, just like calling random women whores or all the rest, or they're being very antagonistic towards everybody they disagree with. I'm not a personal fan of that, especially in regards to like if you want to have real conversations or get anywhere. For Godfast, for example, he really did attack a lot of people and everything. And I think you can do better with that. That's why I'm trying not to really go after anybody specifically here. But I would have to agree with this general sentiment and what he does leads to. I could agree with much of it, like for many of these people, especially if they're calling you a whore and you haven't done anything, it can come from a bad place. But I think we shouldn't jump to a knee-jerk reaction and disregard it or say it's bad based off of that alone. And I think, hey, they could go about it better, but I do think, like, for example, not encouraging men to marry those women, even if they have repented and all the rest. I think something like that, for example, it should be used as more like a last resort. You shouldn't really be seeking out these types of people. If you catch winds that maybe they have a promiscuous history, or maybe they were a prostitute, or they did sleep with a lot of people, I think people should be turned away by that.
I think that's a fair feeling to have. I guess, I don't know, I see someone in your chat said even Jesus would go to whores and tell them to sin no more. Would any guy who does that to me, would she see them as being kind? Well, first of all, I just like, yeah, he
I'm
would
going to
say
be
sin
honest,
no
I'm
more,
not even
and then
reading
they
the
should
chat right now.
stop. Well, it's like, you know, theoretically, if a woman who has been promiscuous has stopped,
Mhm.
I don't understand why you would continue to call her a whore.
So for that, at least with how things
Like, would you
are,
go up to a woman at church and be like, "You're a whore"? Like, or a woman who goes to your church who you know has slept around before, like, would you think it's appropriate for someone to like call her a whore behind her back?
I don't think it would be fun. No, I wouldn't like to do that and everything. But my opinion is that, and you can agree or disagree with this, like, for example, legally, if you do sleep around or if you're literally a whore, the consequences for that are very small. And if you want to encourage or discourage behavior within a society, you have to punish it in some sort of way. I think at least the sentiment a lot of men have, there are no real consequences for those types of things. For example, if you're in a relationship with a person and you cheat on them, you just both go separate ways. Back in the time, in the Bible at least, there would be consequences. You can disagree with like the severity of some of them, I can understand that. But there were consequences and have been for most of history consequences for that behavior. For sleeping around, for being seen as like a whore or a slut or selling yourself. But there aren't any of that. We don't have that anymore. And until that at least changes, like if we did outlaw it and these people did get punished, like, hey, a person was a whore and then she really did get punished for that, I'd be very much in favor of not, you wouldn't even need to shame them as much because you have a different deterrent. But now we don't have any sort of deterrent from it other than social shame.
So you think social shame is like the number one deterrent in changing people's like lives?
I think for in 2026 it would be because there is barely any sort of legal enforcement for this immoral and promiscuous behavior. There is not much stopping me or anybody else from going around and contracting STDs and giving out STDs to other people, for example. There's not much really in
Yeah, I mean,
place.
that's bad.
Yeah, it's pretty
And
bad.
don't get me wrong, like I'm not someone who like enjoys like the concept of like no fault divorce and things like that. Like
Mhm.
I'm not a fan of that. I've seen firsthand how it's hurt many people, including myself. Not that I've been divorced, but like, you know, my family and stuff. Um, but I'm not a fan of that, obviously. I guess like for me, and some people probably think I'm naive, and that's okay. I probably am a little sometimes if I'm being honest,
Well,
but
aren't
I
we all?
guess like yeah, I guess like I just would love, like ideally, and I know that ideally isn't always reality, but
Mhm.
like I would like things to change because the culture changes. And I guess like shame, maybe some could argue that that could play a part in the culture changing. But I just feel like, I don't know, like just sharing the gospel and like talking about how Jesus really can change your life. Like some people might hear that and they might think, okay, that's like so cheesy, but it's just true, you know? And like I've just seen it firsthand. He's changed my heart in so many ways, and I just love him so much, and I think he's just so good, and he's just like full of love, you know? And it's not to say that sin isn't bad. Of course sin is bad. And we should call out sin. We shouldn't, you know, coddle sin and act like it's okay. But yeah.
No, I get that. It's, I mean, if you look back in the Bible at least, we do have that mentality of, hey, God does change you. Look at how much he worked in other people's lives. But throughout a lot of human history, and especially in the Bible, we did have other active deterrents for these things. Even in the Bible, I'm pretty sure we did shame people, even while still having those laws. But like, I understand where you're coming from because there is
Yeah.
something that just doesn't feel right about, like, hey, if a woman was promiscuous, she did then change her life around, and she seems very genuine, and she's no longer sleeping around. It's very difficult to like want to shame that type of person and go up to them and say, "Oh, you're a whore." But
Right.
we don't really have anything else at our disposal to discourage that type of behavior. At least for me, when I think of this, I could see myself in like maybe one instance actually going up to a person being like, "Oh, you're a whore." It would be in that maybe I had a friend. Maybe I had there's a guy who's a friend and he wants to marry this woman. And I flat out go up to him and say, "Hey, look, I'm happy you both get along, but you do know about her promiscuous past, how she's seen around the town and everything. And that comes with a lot of baggage, that comes with a lot of problems with it. There are consequences for these things in our lives, and that's just not going to go away. You can take that up if you want, but just know you're going to get a lot of problems that you wouldn't with a woman who didn't sleep around, who didn't do those types of things. And I think in that instance, you could say flat out, hey, she's a whore. It wouldn't even be in a negative or demeaning way. It'd just be in a prescriptive way of like, hey, that just doesn't go away. You can convert, become Christian, and I believe that's great. Everybody should. But those things, especially with your body, don't just leave you, especially even psychologically. And I think just for his sake, it would be good to go up to him and say, hey, it's not going to sound fun when I say this, but she's just like a whore. And you don't want anything to do with that. And I think that you can do a lot better. You're a very good, self respecting person. You can do a lot better than this.
I guess for me it's just like the disconnect of like, is she still doing it or has she stopped doing it a long time ago and now she's a different person?
It
And
actually,
I
mhm.
get you saying she still has the baggage and like she would. And it's a fair point. And if you don't want to deal with it, you don't want to deal with it. And I think that's okay. But I do think it's a different conversation, obviously.
I do remember this is a funny little story. I gotta just tell you what's popped up on stream. I do remember it was, oh yes, it was the sin is sin part, because that is something I don't know what your position more is on that, but this is something I've heard a lot from people, which is like, hey, sin is sin at the end of the day. And somebody could have had a promiscuous past, but we all are fallen before God and everything. And you can't really judge a person that severely, given we're all fallen creatures, especially if they change. But whether they have converted or changed and everything, it is very nice in regards to Christianity. But if we're just even talking about what's practical in life, a person's past behavior would be the best predictor for future behavior. People don't like it when I bring this up. You can feel free to disagree with me or dislike this example, and I'm not being trying to be provocative here. But let's say you have a daughter. She comes up to you and says, I found a person that I really like. I'm in love with him. He has a very shady past. He's literally known for hitting people, but he's repented and changed, I believe. But he has a big history of that. Multiple people, family members, maybe his sister even. The notion and idea that just because they have stopped, therefore you shouldn't really be bringing it up. I don't think that's something would consistently hold, especially with all types of sin.
I think that's fair. I mean, I do think personally I see abuse and like I know I've seen people trying to compare child with women who have had sex out of marriage. I think those are just two very different things and I would say the same thing about abuse, but I do see your point of like, past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior. Although I do believe people can change, I still understand like being cautious in those situations. And I mean, yeah, if my future daughter one day came up to me and said that, of course I'd be concerned. And I think it's fair, like you said, whenever your mom, said what she said, I think it's fair to be concerned. I just think that, I don't know, ultimately, I just feel like those are, well, obviously bad, right?
Mhm.
Obviously. But at the same time, it's like obviously someone sleeping around is also bad. Even, luckily it's not them necessarily punching you or something, but like it's still not good. Like it hurts in different ways
Mhm.
and it's a betrayal and it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong to have those feelings of like I don't want to deal with that. That's, it could be dangerous. It could be she could hurt me, that's fair. I guess it's just like I do think there are situations where it can work out for everyone, like, well.
I get that. So I wouldn't disagree with the exceptions, but my main point would be in general, like, I don't think either of us would really want our children to be those exceptions if they could avoid it. Wouldn't you agree?
No, that's fair. That is fair. And also for your comment about like the sin is sin. I mean more so, and honestly now I can't lie, I'm looking into Catholicism a little bit. So some of my
That's
opinions are
cool.
starting to shift a little. I'm not entirely like, converting or anything, but I have been but it's obviously very different than like being like a Baptist or something. But I will say like all sin obviously separates us from God. I never meant it in the form of like all sin is like equal on earth. Like obviously like lying is different than murdering is different than abusing someone. I do realize that.
Yeah. No, I get that. It's more of a, I don't know. I guess it wouldn't apply to you because I don't see anything like you said. Well, I think the main part that really brought that up before was more like you aren't better than the girl who stopped doing OF just because her sin was
Mhm.
porn, yours is pride. It was more like on that one.
Mhm.
So, like, I can understand that a lot of guys were probably very, and you got a lot of replies on that. 500? Wow, you've been dealing with this a lot all day, haven't you?
Oh, it's muted. It's muted. Don't worry.
No, I totally get that.
No, but I mean, and I totally get that. Like, obviously, it was, you're making a tweet. There is like a short tweet too. Like it's not gonna have all the nuance that a good conversation would
And I
have.
wouldn't hold
But
that
I
against you.
guess,
I mean, it's Twitter. We're
right? Yeah.
antagonistic by nature there. I'm not going to hold that
I
against you.
and I am trying to be less antagonistic, but I mean I will say like I get it. But I see people who, and I'm not speaking like about you necessarily. I don't
Mhm.
really feel like you're like this, but I've seen like so many people that are straight up like, no, I'm better. Like like for someone who is like genuinely repented, and again, like I know we
Mhm.
can't see someone's heart, but like to sit here and just say like you're a better person overall. I just think that I don't know. I can't get on board with that. Like I think we're all sinners saved by God's grace.
Hmm.
And I get that certain sins are different and have different earthly consequences, but at the end of the day, we're all sinners saved by God's grace. And I just don't think like, trying to compare sins and weigh them against each other when we're all brothers and sisters, like I just don't think it's helpful.
Hmm. Let me think about that. Well, I mean, So it's more like, hey, we shouldn't be acting like. Let me just rephrase it, just like repeat it back to you, make sure this is what you're saying and what you mean. We shouldn't be comparing each other and arguing back and forth on who's better. We're all sinful, and we shouldn't be holding that against each other with this. And we shouldn't be, pretentious and act like we're all high and mighty. Is that more like
Yeah,
what you're saying?
I would say that's pretty accurate to what I'm saying.
I think, let me think. Shoot, I'm at a loss myself. Can't imagine what it must be like for you since you didn't even prepare for this.
No, you're fine. And it's like interesting though because I feel like I say these things and everyone's like, "She's a feminist liberal hippie." And
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't feel like I am. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I feel like I am someone who I truly believe in like, God's love and grace, but also I believe in like justice and like,
Mhm.
no offense, but like if I was some feminist, I wouldn't go on Twitter and talk about being pro-life and like, piss everyone off for that like, you know.
No, I get that. I think with what a lot of them are trying to say, it's not like, how do I put it, real direct feminism. It's more of like the view that they have, it's covert. It's more like in some instances there's a bit more feminist mentality and others there are not. It gets a little bit more complicated. I forget the exact details to it all. With yours, like I haven't seen a lot of your tweets. Yours is more like I saw the whole pride one and the interaction with Godfast and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What was it? I
I mean,
lost
I
my
stopped
trail of thought.
interacting with him just because, it
I
was a
get
different it was a different kind of conversation than the one I'm having with you.
No, I get that. Like people don't have to interact with anybody they don't want to. I fully respect that. It's like sometimes if you think you're going to have a bad negative interaction, like I spoke to him, he's completely different in voice chat or like when you talk to him and have a
Probably.
conversation.
Yeah.
But I
I get
don't
that.
blame you or hold that against you because like sometimes it feels like you're just going to be in for what's it called? An unpleasant experience that doesn't get much from it. I totally understand that.
I don't know. I think so much of this whole conversation can get derailed whenever there are just some people that seem to be, arguing in good faith, and then some people who just like, I don't want to say they're not, but like whenever people just start like, I don't know, calling people whores left and right and saying things like that, I just feel like it kind of derails a lot of the conversation. Um, if that makes sense,
No,
or at
I
least
would
it's how it
agree.
feels to
No,
me.
I'd
And I think
agree.
it scares a lot of people off from having conversations because they, I mean, who wants to talk to a guy who's like screaming at you and calling you a whore and a feminist?
True. I mean, yeah, there's like, I mean, I guess a bit of entertainment in that, but if you're like on the receiving end, you probably just want to go your own way and have nothing to do with it. No, I totally understand that. I think it was a good conversation. I'm really happy you came on and everything to talk about this. I think that was really fun and
Yeah.
nice. Well,
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you being respectful. And, even if we don't, see necessarily eye to eye on everything, I do see where you're coming from. And I just appreciate, I guess, the way you've like handled the conversation. So thank you for that.
I'm happy you enjoyed it. I'm very happy that it was such a pleasant experience. You know, it did clear up a lot of things. I didn't really fully understand your perspective. So, no, this helped me as well to really understand where you're coming from.
Okay, awesome. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
That was fun. That was nice.